So, hello and welcome to Cynic's Guide to Hippie Shit. I'm here today with Cate McMurray, and we've got quite a broad topic, haven't we?
We have.
It's the Cynic's Guide to Spirituality, and lots of people could talk about spirituality and will have a different take on what it means and what it is. And I speak to lots of people who'll say things like, "I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual," or all of these different things. So, hello, and what does spirituality mean?
Hello. Um, well, for me, spirituality is about connecting with who you are at your soul level. It's about being 100% yourself and feeling as though you can do that and it's safe for you to do that, and creating environments that it's safe for you to do that in. And I think a lot of the time, that's not the case, especially for women. And in this current climate that we're in, the spiritual community, it's great. Let me put it out there before it gets twisted. I'm not knocking anyone, I'm not cancelling anyone, or any of the things that we do. But it's become very popular to be spiritual.
Mm.
And I think some of what actually, for me, is what makes you spiritual gets lost in that.
So, what do you mean by that? What is it that you think makes us spiritual, and what is it that you think we are being told makes us spiritual?
Well, like I said, being spiritual is connection to self. At a core level, we are spiritual beings in a human experience. We are this divine source of energy in a meat carcass, effectively. And if you think of it like driving a car, we're kind of driving through life and having a human experience as a spiritual entity. You don't need anything else. However, I think, you know, there are lots of modalities and lots of tools that you can have as a spiritual person that help you connect more deeply. And 100%, I'm down for that. Like, I love my cacao. I do cacao ceremonies. I do shamanic journeying. I do drumming. I do singing bowls, smudging, all of that sort of stuff. Sorry about that. I do all of that. It's part of my routine. However, it's not what makes me spiritual. And I think at this present time, we have a lot of people saying, oh, you need crystals and you need to smudge and you need to be meditating for 3 hours a day in this position. Like, you need to wear tie-dye clothes and be floaty, and you need to, and like I said, there's nothing wrong with those things. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. If that's what lights you up, you go do that. That's great, but you don't need to do it. And I think that's the difference. People get it twisted and think they have to have the crystals, they have to smudge every day, they have to meditate every day, they have to do this and this and this and this and this in order to be spiritual. And it's just not the case.
And we project, or people project onto other people that they think are spiritual. So I'm a mindfulness practitioner, and I teach mindfulness, and I don't meditate for 40 minutes a day because I'm very busy and find it quite challenging, and I have a toddler, and there's probably some excuses going on, but I do practice in my own way. But I was doing a presentation years ago, for some sort of health organization. I can't remember who now. And before I went up, the person running it asked me if I wanted a drink. And I spotted that they have had proper coffee. And I went, oh, I'll have a coffee, please. She looked at me and went, coffee? I thought you'd be drinking herbal tea.
Mm.
And it's like, I just remember because I picked up my coffee then. It's like practicing meditation or being spiritual or any of these things don't have to
Hmm.
necessarily go with what kind of tea you drink. It's like
Hmm.
that's all the fluff that goes with it, but it's
It
just
is.
fluff.
And the fluff's great. I love the fluff. I love it. And it helps me. It helps me connect to who I am. but it doesn't make me spiritual. I mean, I could, well, I mean, I do meditate a lot. I meditate for an hour in the morning and an hour at night, and that's part of my routine. I journal, I do all lots of different rituals and ceremonies, and I have crystals. I don't use them a lot, but I do have crystals. I have that stuff, but it's not what makes me spiritual.
Mhm.
It helps me connect to myself,
Yeah.
and that is what's spiritual. And I just wish that people knew, women especially, that you don't need that stuff. Going back to what you were just saying, like I don't actually drink coffee because I don't like it, not for any other reason, but I love a can of Coke Zero. I love a can of Coke Zero. Now, you tell that to a room full of people that I've gone to, who are spiritual. There's going to be a lot of people in that room that are like, "You're doing what? You're drinking those chemicals." And I get it. I get it.
Poisoning
I know,
yourself.
yeah, I get it. I totally get it. And I agree. Yeah, I am putting that shit in my body, but I know I am. It doesn't make me less spiritual because because it just doesn't. And I like it. So in the same way that you can meditate for 2 hours a day, you can work with your crystals, you can do tarot, you can smudge your house, you can do all of those things, and you can still be a really shitty person.
Yeah. I
I
think
mean,
what you're talking about is also it's about ritual. And so my sense of ritual is it's all around us all the time. So we might have spiritual rituals, but you know, I used to be a smoker. I used to smoke rollies, and smoking a rollie is a ritual
of course it is.
because it's
You're
about
creating it, and
yeah, you finish your meal because the first one after your dinner is often the nicest one, isn't it? So you finish your meal, you get everything out, and you roll it and all of that, and that is as much of the experience as the actual smoking.
yeah,
You might have a ritual of how you do your makeup routine
yeah,
before I just did my makeup before we started today, and it wasn't necessarily because I wanted to look a particular way for the camera. It was part of the ritual of being on camera. And it's like I know that none of those things, it's not about those things,
mhm,
but as humans, I'm not sure if I'm articulating myself well at all, but as humans, I think we need and we crave a ritual, but we also need to know that isn't well, it isn't necessary. That the
yeah,
ritual is just something that we put to make sense of. It's like weddings and funerals and rites of passage that
yeah,
they're ways of punctuating. You might punctuate a day or you might punctuate your life in particular ways, but they're rituals. Does that
yeah.
make sense?
And I think, rituals are necessary if they help you connect to yourself. If you feel more connected to yourself through ritual, great. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm sitting here talking about this, and as I said, like I do all of this stuff, and I do some of it in my work, like when I hold in-person sessions, I do the drumming, I do the smudging, I do this stuff, and I'm not saying it doesn't have a place. It definitely does, and it's beautiful, but it's not what makes me spiritual. If everything kind of that ilk disappeared physically out of my life tomorrow, if I broke my singing bowl and lost all my incense and all my crystals went missing and my tarot cards disappeared, I'd still be spiritual. And I think it's really important, and especially as I say, now that it has become quite popular, and it's like anything that becomes popular, it gets watered down and the message gets lost a little bit. And that's dangerous because people can get lost in the identity of becoming spiritual. They think that it looks a certain way. And so they strive for that and they dress like that and they buy all the stuff. And actually, by doing that, they're moving further away from being spiritual because being spiritual is being yourself. Now, if that is your true self, that's different. But for a lot of people, it's not.
Yeah.
I can't go to the supermarket in I don't know, a tie-dye caftan because I'm cold and I'm old and I don't want to. Now, I love a tie-dye caftan. I'm not dissing anybody that does that. But for me, I mean, I'm in a hoodie. I like a hoodie. Like, it doesn't make me not spiritual. I don't necessarily look spiritual a lot of the time. I have horses. So, I wear jeans and Chelsea boots and shirts, stripy shirts a lot of the time. It doesn't look like I belong to the spiritual community. But like, what does that look like? And I think that's the problem that if you said to anybody on the street, what does a spiritual person look like? There would be a stereotype.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's fine. There's stereotypes for more or less everything. And that's absolutely fine. But where the problem comes is where people who want to evolve their spirituality get caught up in looking and being like the stereotype. And that's what I'm trying to say. Does
And
that
not
make
being,
sense?
yeah, this is about being authentic. So there's a couple of things that popped into my
Yeah.
head. So as well as doing mindfulness and the podcast, I'm also a psychotherapist, and I've been a therapist since 2012. And I remember when I went on my first placement and I first started, I had this idea of what a counselor looked like.
Hmm.
So I had to wear whatever time of year, I had to wear long sleeves to cover up my tattoos. And I had big flowing scarves that I basically thought I should look like an art teacher. And there's nothing
Hmm.
wrong with looking like that, but that wasn't what I looked like. So
Yeah.
so it took me a while to kind of go, oh no, I need to be me. And I remember in 2013, I decided to get dreadlocks because I was doing a bit of traveling and it seemed like a good idea at the time. I didn't know how much it was going to hurt having them put in. And we weren't quite in the same place as we are now in terms of cultural appropriation and all of that kind of thing. So anyway, I had these dreadlocks, and before I did it, I spoke to my clinical supervisor about it, and she went, "Well, I don't think it'd be very appropriate for your clients." So the idea that like I shouldn't be a therapist whilst being myself
Yeah.
was very powerful, and yet actually, if we're going to support other people, we need to be ourselves. It's really
Yeah,
important.
absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
the other thing that I was thinking as you were talking, in terms of like how we can kind of get caught up in striving to be spiritual, striving to be our best self, and all of the things that we end up kind of totally second guessing ourselves and monitoring ourselves to make sure we're getting it right. Um, and we overthink it. And
Yeah.
I remember talking to a client recently and saying, you know what, you just need to be a bit basic. You need to, take a pause on trying to be something and just, watch a bit of Netflix, you know, have a
Chill out.
chill
Mm.
out. Yeah. And I think that's really important too. It's like, yes, be spiritual. Yes, be socially aware, be informed, do as they do the work,
Mm.
but don't do it constantly. Sometimes, I love a trashy novel.
Yeah.
That's important.
I was talking to my kids earlier, and we were talking about something, and it's actually a really good kind of analogy. It's a good metaphor for what we're talking about, because we were talking about how people eat. And they'd seen a video of somebody in America who was using a knife and fork to cut up all of their food on their plate, and then they put their knife down and they just eat their food with a fork, and they were like, "What?" Like, do you know what I mean? Like, sort of shoveling it in. And we were talking about it, and we were saying, like, my daughter said, ultimately, it doesn't matter. Because the only reason we think, like, when you go to a posh restaurant and you have to be on your best behavior and you're using a napkin and a water glass and a wine glass and you're putting your knife and fork down in between mouthfuls and you're taking your time, the only reason we do that is so that other people don't think we're a slob, basically. And because we think that's how we need to behave in order to fit in that environment. And the reason we think that is because they are the kind of, they're the outward appearance of how it needs to be for you to fit into that environment. But there are people who eat their dinner on their knee every night with just a fork. They still eat their food. The bottom line is we all still consume our food, whether we eat it with our hands, whether we eat it with a fork, whether we eat it with a napkin and a water glass and with both hands. That's all just appearance. We all eat. Well, you know, other circumstances aside.
Yeah.
But if we have food, how we eat it is irrelevant. And that's kind of the thing. Like, how are you getting your spirituality? How are you connecting to your spirituality? It actually doesn't matter what that looks like. What matters is that you do it, that
Yeah.
you get to that point. And I don't care how you get to connect with yourself. I just want you to connect with yourself. And for the school mum who, you know, uh, is kind of rushing around in the morning, getting her kids ready, finding shoes, like trying to find a clean t-shirt because somebody's just spilled their yogurt, like hasn't brushed her hair yet, like has got a day of Zoom interviews or whatever it is, and is running around saying to somebody who has a life like that, for example, it's just one example, or you need to meditate in the morning and you need to smudge your house before you start your day and you need to not drink coffee, you need to drink herbal tea, and really that makeup you're wearing has got toxic ingredients, so you shouldn't really be wearing that, and those Crocs that you've got on, they, you know, you really should be wearing kind of, you know, more sustainable, ethical shoes. I mean, fuck off. I mean, has she got fucking time? No. It's not realistic, and it's not what's going to connect her to herself, because all she's going to be doing is going, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not good
Yeah.
enough. I'm not good enough. I don't fit in. I can't do it. Therefore, I'm not good enough. And that
Don't
just
make her
goes
try
against,
anything. I
yeah,
can't do
I'm not going to do
what.
anything because I'm not good enough. I can't do it. Who is that helping? Because it's not helping anybody. Like, all I wanted to do is get her shit done, get her kids to school, come back, make a fucking drink. I don't care what it is. It could be vodka. Like, just make yourself a drink and sit down and go, that's it.
Yeah.
That's the best place to start. And I think that has got lost somewhere in translation.
Yeah.
And that's why I do what I do.